Hello and welcome to Behind the Ballot, YourTV's extensive coverage of the 2018 municipal election. Joining me now in studio is Municipality of Port Hope Mayoral candidate Terry Hickey. Terry,
hey,
welcome to YourTV. How you doing?
Thank you. I'm very well, thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so for those that don't know you, I know you've been on council for the last 4 years. For those that don't know you, tell us the Terry Hickey story to start things off.
We haven't had enough time, but I'll do the best I can.
Okay, condensed version.
All right.
Nicole's notes.
I've been in Port Hope for 12 years. And as you just said, I've been on the Port Hope Council for the last 4. Previous to that, I was chair of the Port Hope Ratepayers Association. And that was a really good entree into the whole world of the political arena that I've seen for the last 4 years. Before that, I was in Toronto, but mostly working back and forth to San Diego.
What made you decide to run for council? Did that stem out of the Ratepayers Association? Yeah.
Yeah, it did. What I found was I got to know some of the procedures. I got to know some of the foibles, some of the opportunities. And there were a number of people who came to me and said, well, why don't you run? And I would hesitated for quite a while, actually. Right. And then finally said, you know, why not? And I'm very glad that I did.
You know, it can be somewhat of a thankless job. For sure, you're out there in the public eye. A lot of people don't understand the issues and what's going on. Recap the last 4 years on council, what that's been like for you and what you've been able to accomplish.
Oh, thanks. Actually, a fair bit, because one of the reasons I went into it, I guess to go back to your previous question, was that in many cases I would see things happening on council with councillors that the amount of information that they had personally wasn't necessarily commensurate with what was in the reports. And so I had 2 particular goals. One was to truly understand the report I was reading in council or committee of the whole. But secondly, and probably more deeply, was how can I, as a councillor representing the community, involve myself with the staff, with management, with everyone, and to say, well, if we're going to do something, have we thought about X or Y or Z, so that when it does come before council, it has a council position in it as well. And so those were the 2 key things. So over the last 4 years, if we take a look at a few things in particular, one was the bridge. Right. I mean, now the whole concept of having to replace the bridge certainly wasn't mine, but what had happened was one thing was in looking, when were we going to stop using the bridge? And in terms of working with staff and engineers and actually checking it out for myself, that bridge really needed to be stopped on the winter season, which was November the 15th. Could we have gone through the winter with it? Maybe. Do I want to risk that? Absolutely not. Right. And so I think it was the good thing to do. One of the fun things, though, was to engage the military in removing the old bridge. And for two reasons. And that took months and months and months, because I had to talk to them frequently with staff. Right. And finally, we did get them to come in for the weekend. They did remove the bridge. It was a great event for the community.
The videos of that were fantastic.
It was good, wasn't it?
People came out for it.
Yeah. And we probably saved it. There's a guesstimate of around $80,000. I don't know exactly what it was in actual fact, but it was probably somewhere in that territory. So I'm very proud of involvement that way. And it was great to work with the managers, because we worked together on it, we engendered some excitement on it, and we actually got a result from it, which was great. Similarly with the transit. For years, when I'd been watching council, the whole thing around transit was, well, we'll drop an hour, we'll charge 15 cents more, we'll do whatever. But when I was talking to staff, it was apparent with them that their deep down desire was, we need to do something very different. And so when we sat there and we spoke about it, we decided that we would do something very different on it. And that's why now it is completely different than what it was. And over the next year and a half, 2 years, we'll morph again into something even better than what we have now. So there's a huge progression in that. The municipality has now taken on the task of running the system. So we're going to be saving some money that way. We've got vehicles coming in hopefully this month, which again will save us money. And we'll really be able to control our own destiny with that. And that was very important to me, that we could do that. Right.
So as the community grows, that's going to be...
It is, because the thing is, right now, we went from routes where we were driving around not picking up anybody, which was a really major observable situation with townspeople, to where we've reduced the routes, we are picking people up. But in the future, we'll have the ability to travel everywhere within the boundary of the community. So that's a big plus.
Right. Were there any surprises, any eye-opening moments when you got onto council that you didn't expect?
Only every day, but they could be little, they could be big. I don't think there were something that I can really kind of point out other than maybe what went on this week. But certainly one of the things that a rookie counselor has to think about is the small vocal group. Because they can, you're very keen to get in there and do whatever it is you can do, and you get 2 or 3 people who say, well, we want this, we need this. There's a tremendous thinking that, oh, wow, this is a big issue.
Right.
And it's really important to just back up a little bit and say, well, let's explore this. Because then there's a preponderance to maybe move in that direction a little too early. So that was kind of one of the things I think a number of us had to get over sooner rather than later.
Right. One of those groups is the RTA that you were head of, right? The Taxpayers Association.
Yes.
Sorry. So was there anything there that surprised you or took you? Like, how did you deal with that, having come from that role as president and then on to the council?
It was interesting because Jim Ronson took it over after I did. He was the vice chair at that point in time, and he did a very good job. And one of the important things was Jim or anyone else could come to the microphone and ask a question, and they maintain the same sort of thinking, and that is, we have a question to ask, but we're going to ask it with sincerity, with courtesy, with politeness, and we're going to look for an answer.
Right.
And that really worked well, and so we really did continue to work quite well within those boundaries.
So you're coming to the end of your rookie term as councillor, your first term as councillor. Why the decision to run for mayor of the municipality?
Progress. To continue progress. We were very fortunate with this last council. We had a number of people who truly invested time, effort, intensity, intellect into what was going to be done within the community.
Right.
As you know, we made some significant changes early on and then continued through. We had very lively debate on issues. We worked well individually or in small groups. So a lot got done. Now, continuing, I don't know who's going to be in the next council. And so really one of the things is I just kind of took a step back and said, okay, how have things gone for me as a councillor right now? And what would I expect from a mayor in the next go-round? What would I like to see happen? So at that point I said, well, I'd like to see A, B, C, and D. And so I want to bring that to the next council. I want to bring an enhanced level of teamwork. I want to bring an enhanced level of communication because I think that's key. I also want to take a look at decentralizing power of the mayor's office. Because I've certainly found over the past 4 years that when you decentralize power and you involve all the stakeholders, you really do get faster results and better results, and people are far happier with what they've done.
Right.
They're involved. There's a stake in it.
Right. Yeah. You mentioned things happening right off the bat at the beginning of the last term. One of those things was eliminating the CIO position. Yes. What are your views on that moving forward?
I don't see any immediate need to take another CIO into place. I think in terms of effect, we've been fairly effective that way. I would like to see some change in structure in terms of relationship between council and the directors because it's a little vague at the moment. That was one of the considerations that I had. I would like to tighten that up a little bit. I think it's forced the directors. Perhaps force is not a proper word, but it certainly has brought the directors together in a kind of camaraderie, if you will, that they didn't have before. It also gave them the opportunity to know that they had key decisions to make and the ability to make it and the support of making it. But by the same time, that link to council, a little tentative, and I'd like to tighten that up.
Did that get better? Did the progress getting better throughout the 4 years?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think part of it is the way that councillors and directors reacted to one another. And I go back to what I said in terms of different councillors working with directors. I think there was a greater depth of working together. And I think that was really effective both for the councillor and for the director or manager or whatever it happens to be.
Right.
And we did see very powerful results from that.
One of the biggest issues that's gone, right up to the end of this council term is 65 Ward Street. What are your views on that and how it's been handled by council so far?
I'm very disappointed, to be quite candid. I really didn't at the beginning think that this was going to come out this way, so I'm kind of shocked. Um, when we had the meeting this past Tuesday, I really thought there was an opportunity to do a reconsideration and revisit this. Because one of the things that I said is when it was first brought to us, and I believe April the 3rd,
Right.
from then to when the decision was made to intent to designate was just a week. And as I said the other night, I said, we took 2 years to figure out how to cut the grass in the rural ward. And we took 7 days on a multifaceted, incredibly sensitive thing as this. So from a process viewpoint, I don't think we did that well at all. In terms of when we had the intention to designate, and I do thank you because this is the opportunity to make something very clear to everybody. All 7 members of council voted to designate that, not necessarily for the same reason. And my reason for that designation was one thing only, and that is that I wanted to have absolute confidence that Southbridge, should they choose to knock that building down, would continue on with the project, that they would knock it down, sell it, something else gets built. We didn't quite have that, and that's all I was waiting for. And we virtually immediately got that. And I'm comfortable with that. And I've done my personal research into both the company and what it is they're trying to do and the specifications needed. And I'm very comfortable that they were right in doing that. Now, about a year ago, they actually came in front of a development committee within Port Hope. And the president of that was there at that time said distinctly, definitely, clearly, that building was going to come down. There was no surprise there.
Right.
And he explained why. And, you know, you don't like to see heritage buildings go. I understand that. But at the same time, what I think we missed as council is, did we weigh out all the factors? And I don't believe we did weigh out the factors. And at the end of the day, we're choosing to save a quote heritage building, but we're really potentially throwing out a whole lot. We could lose that facility altogether. I'm not sure whether we will or we won't, but the fact that we could bothers me from the viewpoint that alienates a huge number of our citizens, the most vulnerable of our citizens, certainly impacts labor force, definitely impacts taxation, development charges. I mean, I've been campaigning for the last few weeks, and the one thing I'm hearing from everybody is about taxation.
Right.
And here we're potentially going to throw away this revenue.
We're going to talk about that, and I also want to get your thoughts on whether this 65 Ward Street issue is done deal now, or if it carries on when we come back after the break. You're watching Behind the Ballot, YourTV's extensive coverage of the 2018 municipal election. More with Port Hope Mayoral candidate Terry Hickey after the break. Welcome back to Behind the Ballot here on YourTV, our extensive coverage of the 2018 municipal election. Joining me in studio now is mayoral candidate for the municipality of Port Hope, Terry Hickey. We were talking about 65 Ward Street. Is that issue now done?
No, it's still underway, because what happens now is, I believe October the 3rd, the Conservation Review Board will come in, they'll have a meeting with those people who were in objection. From there, they will provide some sort of report, and that report will come back to council. Now the question is, how long will it take them to make that report? If it takes them a week or two, it will come back to this council. If it takes them a few months, it more than likely will come to the new council.
Right.
And at that point, it comes back and they will say, yes, it could be designated, it's worthy of designation, or no, it's not worthy of designation. But in either case, at that point in time, council then says, all right, no more intention to designate, we're going to decide, we're going to designate it or not designate it. And at that point in time, it's a 4-3 vote, whereas the reconsideration was a 5-2 necessary vote.
Okay, so there's
So
more to come.
there's more to come on this.
We
It's
just
not
don't know
done
when,
yet. No,
right?
no.
It's still a fluid
Yeah.
situation. You started to talk to there about taxes.
Yeah, I think what's happening is there's a lot of tax shock when people move here from other communities. I mean, they come in knowing that it's going to be more, but they still get some shock when they come here. And I think what people are looking for is information more than anything. How's my money being spent? Is it being spent wisely? Are you doing the right thing? And even if they don't necessarily like what you're doing, Do they understand what you're doing?
Right.
And in some cases, we're not necessarily as good as we could or should be in getting that information out to people. And that's one of the things we really, really need to do. And I would like to see the community, and by that I mean both urban and rural, start to be more involved in taking a look at, well, what are going to be our priorities for the next year, 2 years type of thing. Now, there's lots of technology to do that, but underneath technology has to be desire. If we don't focus on that, it cannot happen. And I think we have to sharply focus on 2 or 3 things over the course of the next couple of years to really move ourselves ahead to where we want to be.
One of the things you talk about there it sort of fits in with one of your focuses in your campaign is to communicate with residents. And it's getting that communication out there. It's getting that information out there of where your money is going.
Yeah.
And having that and a two-way conversation as well, I would think.
Yeah, one of the things, even with technology right now, I find that there's less communication and more noise.
Very
so
easily, yes.
how do you take care of that? And you know, we've lately been having a lot more success with getting communications out to residents through emails. You can subscribe to our email list, so you can get whether a road is closed, there's going to be a public information session, what happens to be, everything is out there. So what we need to do is we need to get as many people within the community to subscribe to this. And then they can always see what's going on every single day. And it becomes just a habit. Oh, that's important. Oh, wow. Or, that's okay. I can deal with that. So, and you know, as you know, we have just the one newspaper right now, which is once a week. We certainly have YourTV, which is very helpful to everyone. But we still have a gap. And we have to figure out how to jump that gap. And we haven't done that yet. And one thing that dovetails into that is the whole question of rural internet.
Right.
Now, when I started on council, I was working with the Rural Action Working Group for quite some time. And that came up. And my thinking then was, well, you know, this is not a municipal issue. This is an issue for the private sector to resolve. But it became very apparent that the private sector doesn't have any interest in doing that because of return on investment. Getting out there and doing that is very, very tough. So I've been reading, watching, talking to people and seeing what's been going on. And in fact, communities are starting to really get involved directly on that in order to satisfy this. And I see a lot of pieces of the puzzle floating around right now and perhaps starting to come together, but not yet. I would like to see Port Hope at the very start edge when these pieces come together, because internet should be treated as infrastructure, which means that we need the province and the feds to come in to do that infrastructure. And I believe we should partner too. We have the ability and the resources to be able to do that in a partnership. So I'm not asking for a handout on all levels,
right.
But financially we need that assistance, because we've got 500 kilometers of road out there that if we were to string wires, that's a lot of wire. It's about $25,000 per kilometer to string wire. So you're looking at a $6 to $8 million project to do that if you were going to go a wired route. But we have all sorts of different technologies coming on. So I would like to see us tackle that as a core issue up front. I think that's very, very important to do, because that also then proceeds to another thing, which is how do we encourage families to move to this community? Within town, we've got very good internet access between, Cogeco and Bell and whatever. Out in the country, it's a different story. So someone wants to move out into a rural environment, it's a challenge to be able to do that. They really, really do have a problem. We need to try and solve that. Now, in order to get families out here, 2 things we need are good communications, which we're a little shy on for the rural, but the other thing is transportation. Now, we talked about the transit system within the community, but what I would like to be able to focus on too is how to get into the city or somewhere else. We still have people who come out here, they may telecommute, they may be able to work from here, but every once in a while they have to go into the city. How do they do that? Well, they can take the VIA train, which has some certainly limited access at the Port Hope stop.
Certainly,
right?
And it is considerably expensive.
Right.
It's not cheap.
Right. Or they have to go to the GO station, which means they've got to drive to the GO station, leave their car. Now, I'm a one-car family, so it's problematic if one of us goes into that.
Right.
So what I'd like to see is I'd like to see some transit system to get to the GO station. It'll be a while before it gets to Bowmanville. So at some point we get it from Cobourg, Port Hope to Bowmanville. But right now I'd like to see it get into Oshawa so that we can give people much more opportunity to conveniently get that transportation moving. And I think so far what I've seen is a lot of real enthusiasm for that. And what I've asked through council staff to do is to come back and have some public information sessions to get that information from the public. I think we have a need for it. You might think we have a need for it. Does the general public want it? So do we have enough momentum to go out and get it? Because I think we have to figure that out first. Once that's figured out, we can say, yep, it's a real need. So let's find some solutions to that.
And the general public that's growing, that's coming from the GTA, that aren't ready to retire yet, that are doing a regular commute. What I want to say, if you're successful in your run for mayor, you'll have a seat on county council.
Yes.
So the last two issues we talked about, transportation and the rural internet, is that something that you would see being a good idea for the entire county to work on, i.e. cost savings when you're talking about money coming from the provincial and the federal government? I mean, there should be a plan there to take care of the entire county and everybody benefits.
I believe that's the case, yes. Yeah, I'm very much for that. I think we have to find, again, same with Port Hope. I think for county council, we have to define the 2 or 3 key issues and really go after them very strongly. Because if you have 6 or 7 or 8 issues, it's all very weak all the way around. Right. And I think that's a key one. Because it's no longer a, gee, it's really nice to have internet. That went by the way
no, it's really
years ago.
to have internet because you can't go to school as a kid without coming home and having reliable internet because everything's being sent home that way.
Yeah, that's right.
So I mean, it is something that can be looked at throughout the entire county, and everybody has issues. Every municipality, every town in the county are going to have issues that have to be addressed at, but there are a couple that are universal, and that transportation one too is one of those because it gets everybody from the entire county a little bit closer to the GTA.
The other thing, too, I think that's really important, I just had a conversation today on it, is I would like to start trying to bring the rural and urban communities together. As you well know, we've had a lot of friction there, and that stems back 18 years. And I can remember asking a question to the previous council in terms of, well, when amalgamation occurred, what was done to kind of bring these 2 communities together? A lot of silence. We're really late in doing it. We've got a lot of people who are disenchanted, they feel disenfranchised. There's a lot of negativity there. And I think there are things to be done to start to really work our 2 communities into one community. And it's not an immediate thing, it will take a while to do. But I think it's an extremely valuable and absolutely necessary thing to do. Absolutely. And we need to be doing it now.
One of the other parts of your focus in your campaign is the river and waterfront strategy. Right. Let's expand on that a little bit.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting timing viewpoint from now that the PHI is actually starting to move dirt. They're timing, and we have an election. So the timing on this is we're looking at probably 2 terms of council before the PHI are finished.
Right.
So what the next council needs to do is to get on top of, all right, we're getting a cleanup. What do we do with the pier? Because we've said, okay, we're going to rip everything off of it, but now what do we do with it?
Right.
But with that, we also just have to decide what are we going to do with things like the West Beach? What are we going to do further with the river? And it has to be a contiguous plan rather than just a little kind of patchwork quilt of things. And so I believe that there's enough interest in that. There are certainly enough informed people within the community to help out. I mean, that's the one thing that this council's really relied on, is the people within the community. We went out and we worked a lot with them. We very rarely brought in consultants to do anything. So not only was that a huge savings, but we really were investing in the intelligence of our own community.
Did you find any drawbacks for that, for not using consultants? It seems like everybody is using consultants and a lot. So the decision not to go to consultants, do you think that's paid off, or do you miss anything?
No, I think that's paid off because I think, yes, you have consultants who are very focused on certain areas, but I don't get the opinion that most consultancies that come into municipalities actually deliver what is expected by the community. And we saw that years and years ago with the logos and the marketing and the branding for the community. I mean, that was just a complete waste of time. I think that if we have very small projects that are very, very focused, for instance, on things such as communication, someone to come in and help us say, look, this is the way to get to the most number of people, the most efficiently with the least expense. There's a value to that. So that kind of assistance is huge.
Right. Affordable housing is something that it's not unique to the municipality of Port Hope. It's province-wide, countrywide. That's another issue that you want to be able to...
Yeah, and that is, again, it's one of those things, well, that's a county responsibility. I think what we have to do, though, is we have to say it's a responsibility. And so we need, as a community, as a Port Hope community, to say, that's all well and good, but what more can we do? With whom do we have to speak? Who do we have to maneuver? What do we have to do? I think leaving it totally in someone else's hands because that's their job isn't the way to do it.
I think it's been, or it should have been figured out by now, that it is a team effort of all interested parties, all levels of government, all of us as citizens. It's a responsibility. Good luck on the campaign trail. October 22nd is coming up very fast.
And it starts October the 9th, actually.
Well, yeah, exactly, right? Voting starts early. Thank you very much. We've been talking with mayoral candidate for the municipality of Port Hope, Terry Hickey. Terry Hickey, you've been watching Behind the Ballot, YourTV's extensive coverage of the 2018 municipal election.